Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This week, our every 5 years Summerslam anthology continues as we cover one of the wildest WWE pay-per-views of all time. It's SummerSlam 2005. Kyush, what the hell was going on in WWE in the summer of 2005?
There was a special strain of cocaine that was going around the writers' room where they have all of these characters, and they spent the last year, and people don't really give this enough credit, kind of building up and getting over a lot of new people, and a lot of interesting things have happened. We've talked about how WrestleMania 21 was built more stars than any one pay-per-view in wrestling history. And now they've just decided to take all these new stars and just go batshit insane with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, they're riding that wave that they built at WrestleMania where John Cena, Triple H, Edge, Randy Orton, all these guys got made in one night. I mean, here we get the fallout from it, and things are pretty damn good. I mean, this was a fun time to be a wrestling fan.
There's moments in this show, and we'll mention them as we go, where you can kind of see cracks in the armor, uh-oh, that's not going to be great in the future. But as an actual fan watching it this time, it's so great. This is actually this is the first wrestling show I ever showed my wife, trying to get her into wrestling, and it worked because it was a great show. And the storylines going into it were so compelling.
The main event is almost surreal as Hulk Hogan will take on Shawn Michaels in a match that I don't think anyone ever thought we would see.
It's kind of funny, too, because that was never really the match. It was always Hulk and Brett, right? Hulk and Shawn, despite the fact that they were top guys for their respective companies at the same time, you just never really thought of them together.
Because it makes no sense.
They have nothing in common except for the fact that Shawn didn't have any reason to be bitter with Hulk like Brett did. Hulk never held Shawn down.
Yeah, Hulk gave him one here, though. We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I just assume, I don't suspect either guy was particularly itching to work with the other. I feel like this is just they were, the writers and Vince or whoever were on the plane and they were spitballing and somebody was like, what if we could do Hogan versus Shawn? How great would that be?
And then somebody was like, okay, but they're both baby faces and they're both kind of played out and boring baby faces. And then somebody just jumped up from their chair and just was like, what if he could be 90s Shawn Michaels again for 1 month? No, that'll never work, but it does.
No, I mean, that is what is amazing is Shawn just flips the switch and becomes the Heartbreak Kid again.
That's the painful thing, is knowing that the Heartbreak Kid was still in there and we only get it for this 1 month, and his entire second run is so depressing because it's beautiful, you guys. He's one of the greatest heels who ever lived.
But yeah, it turned out that Shawn Michaels was still a great heel, and we had just been waiting all these years to see him come out again. So the way they set this up, Hogan was inducted into the Hall of Fame at WrestleMania. He came back. He made that appearance at WrestleMania where he saved Eugene from Muhammad Hassan and Daivari. And then they set up a match where Hogan and Michaels would be tag team partners at Backlash against Hassan and Daivari. They, of course, won that match. Then Hogan disappeared for a little while. And then on the June 27th episode of Raw, they booked Cena in a 6-man tag match against Jericho and Christian and Tyson Tomko. And Cena had to find 2 partners. So he got Shawn Michaels, and then the surprise third partner was Hogan. Of course, the faces win. Hogan hits Tomko with a leg drop. The next week, on the 4th of July, Hogan and Michaels team up against the kind of weird team of Kurt Angle and Carlito. And, of course, Hogan and Michaels win yet again. Looks like Raw is just going to end with a boring pose down for the millionth week in a row. And then Shawn Michaels kicks Hulk Hogan in the fucking face.
I feel like everyone who watched the show has their own story about how checked out they were on the show before this. Because the main event of this show is an 18-minute long snooze fest of a main event. And it's so boring, and Hulk Hogan is so played out at this point. And even Shawn Michaels, there's nothing interesting about this character. And like there could never be a match that was less in doubt of how it was going to end. So I remember like I was hanging out with my friend Colin. I was just sitting on his couch like playing video games, and like he was on his computer not even watching the show. And like I kind of vaguely glanced up like, oh, they're posing. That's fine. And then the super kick happened, and like I just made a loud noise like "Ah!" And he looked over like, what?
Yeah.
Because like the idea that anything interesting could happen was so crazy.
So yeah, I didn't watch it live because it was the 4th of July. I was somewhere. I was like watching fireworks or something. DVR'd it, came home, watched it late at night, and then like almost turned it off before the kick. Like just about had like exited out of it.
Words can't express how boring and shitty this main event was.
Yeah.
There were probably a lot of people who turned it off before the kick, only to suddenly be like, oh, what? What happened? Shit, I gotta watch the replay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a super kick. Like, because they posed for like 5 minutes. Like literally
on and on.
Just like hulking up. And that wasn't unusual because that's all Hulk did at this point. Was like he was good for like one leg drop, and then he just posed endlessly. And the crowds would eat it up, and it was fine, but it was just boring as shit. So they're doing all the poses, and then Shawn Michaels sticks him with this sweet chin music.
Kicks his head off, and then just stares at him with the most hateful look.
And that's the thing. Like, you could tell that a switch flipped, because, like, this is an acting job by Shawn Michaels, this whole run, that I don't know that we knew he was capable of. And it kind of is the forerunner to his Undertaker storylines, where you just kind of see that there's more depth in his ability to portray his character than we thought. But, like, just that look that he gives Hogan, like, look at you now, you piece of shit. It's beautiful. It's one of the best endings to Raw ever.
Yeah. And eventually, as it goes on, the implication kind of becomes that, like, Shawn is tapping into this dark side of himself because he knows that that's what it's going to take to beat Hulk Hogan. And I love that.
Yeah, I love the idea that, like, Shawn knows that he's, like, in this nice little cozy retirement version of himself, but that the showstopper, the Heartbreak Kid, is still in there somewhere, and he's got to use it.
Yeah. The big highlight here for me was the promo in Montreal.
Dude.
Shawn in his, like, tan suit and his pink tie. Quite the look. And he just cuts the longest, like a solid 15 or 20 minute heel promo. And just has the crowd in the palm of his hand.
And for context, too, because a lot of people may not have been watching, for, like, every single appearance that he had made, not just in Montreal, but anywhere in Canada, literally from the moment of his return, he was the biggest heel in WWE. It did not matter what he was doing or who he was facing or what the context was. Those fans never forgave him. In a way that almost seems bizarre now and impossible. We're talking like 8-9 years after the fact. And so they knew full fucking well what they were going to get. And it was so much better even than we were expecting. And then with the Brett tease.
Okay, this is where it's confession time. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that in the late 90s and early 2000s, I had this thing where I always thought Shawn Michaels was about to return.
Always, every single time. Who's the higher power? Well, it's Shawn Michaels. Oh, who's coming in at the Royal Rumble? Oh, it's Shawn Michaels.
Who hit Steve Austin with a car? Shawn Michaels. Any mystery, the answer was going to be it's Shawn Michaels.
The answer was almost never Shawn Michaels.
Once Shawn actually came back, this switch to Bret Hart is going to come back.
Yes. And so this was the moment, because this was too soon. Like, they weren't really on terms with Bret yet. There was no way this is actually a real thing.
They weren't far, because he goes into the Hall of Fame at the WrestleMania right after this.
Yeah,
they're getting close. It wasn't that crazy to think Bret was going to do something here.
I don't think they would have even done this if, like, things hadn't thawed a lot with Bret. Because, like, I don't think Like Brett would have just been like, "Yo, fuck you guys, you can't use my fucking music, kiss my ass," and it would have been over. So they probably even asked him if it was okay. But like, even if he just comes out on the stage and
Oh
calls him a
God.
piece of shit,
Yeah.
like Hulk Hogan's twice the wrestler you ever were.
Yeah. I mean, in this match, they're chanting for Brett at one point.
The problem is you can't just bring back Brett for a one shot because it's been built up so much.
Yeah, I mean, it was the most anticipated thing in wrestling was Brett and Vince. It was what people were dying for. And Brett and Shawn, I think, more is what we wanted, but those guys couldn't have a proper match because of the physical condition Brett was in.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and then a little later in the year, they did a thing where, like, Vince said he was going to review the Bret Hart DVD on Raw, and it was the main event of Raw. And I was sure Brett was going to come out and interrupt him, and instead it was Shawn, which was a big letdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Shawn cut that amazing. He did the parody where he played Hogan and Larry King.
Yep. Oh, that was the best. Like, he was having so much fun as that.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the thing. You can tell that Shawn Michaels is enjoying himself so much.
This clearly seems like it's, like, reinvigorated him.
Like, I don't know whose idea the storyline was. I don't know. There's a possibility that Shawn, like, wanted to do it just to show that he could. Just to be like, before I hang it up, let me turn heel one more time just to have some fun.
Yeah.
I don't know that because I don't think anybody's ever really talked about it, but it's just so funny to me how so much of his late run is really just random shit punctuated by great matches, and this stands so much out as just him loving it.
So the backstage story here. Michaels reportedly wanted to do 2 matches where he would win the first one and then they would come back for a rematch that Hogan would win. That strikes me as the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, heel Shawn like sticks around until like WrestleMania and then you blow it off, right?
Yeah. That didn't work for Hogan.
That doesn't work for me, brother.
Oh, I don't know. I got some other things going on.
Gotta get that hip surgery, dude. I'm not sure we get more than one match out of this bad boy, and if it's only one match, I'm not really sure the Hulkster can do the job, brother.
Yeah, Hogan apparently offered to do 2 matches if he could win them both.
If he could win them both.
Pettiest thing I've ever heard.
Oh, cool, Hulk. Thanks for that.
Who the fuck would care about the rematch if Hogan won the first one?
Hogan doesn't give a shit about that.
Yeah. Hogan wins the first one and Shawn beats him up to get his heat back, I guess.
But, like, we're at a point, and Hogan's got to realize this. We're like, the number of matches Hogan has left in the tank is, like, less than 10. And he knows that. So he's got to, like, if this could be his last match, he's got to win it. Like, that's just how it is. And so I can kind of see that.
He does, I believe, one more WWE match after this. He wrestles Orton at the next SummerSlam. And then he's gone and he goes to TNA out. I mean, he's still in the WWE orbit for a little while after that, but he doesn't wrestle. And then he goes to TNA and he does a few matches there.
TNA does Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair in a street fight.
Of course they did.
Like, somehow they talk both of those men into doing that when Hulk's, like, about to have surgery. It's like the one time in his whole career Hulk Hogan was sympathetic because, like, they took advantage of him. And it's like, Hulk, say no to that, buddy.
I mean, I think his last match was against Sting, right?
I believe so, yes.
I know he wrestled Sting in TNA in, like, 2010 or 2011. I don't think he ever had another match after that.
I think his last match was that one he had against Flair in Australia, where they both like bled like a shitload, and it was really depressing because they were so old.
I think that was before that. I thought that was before he went to TNA.
I don't know. It's not worth getting that much into. I'll look it up on Wikipedia while we talk about better things.
Another major story coming in here is Matt Hardy has returned to WWE. Remember him?
He will not die.
Yeah. So to recap, it's a long story, but Matt was injured. He was home, and while he was home, Edge and Lita had an affair. Lita and Matt were together in real life. There was some hanky-panky going on with Edge and Lita on the road, and didn't end well. Matt found out. He, understandably wasn't happy, but, kind of refused to stop talking about it publicly to the point where it was probably legitimately becoming dangerous for, like, Matt, for Edge and Lita.
I mean, we kind of have to talk about here, like, there's a blurring of real life in kayfabe here.
Yeah.
And no, we're never going to be totally sure of how much of it was real and how much of it they just realized they could milk for money. Like, obviously, I'm sure everyone involved was very upset. Edge, like, I think they only slept together, like, one actual time. And then, like, because Edge was married and he was trying to reconcile with his wife. And, like, Edge and Lita had been having relationship problems before this because, like, at one point, Matt was injured for, like, 9 months and then Lita got injured for, like, 6 months.
Yeah.
So they just didn't see each other for, like, a year and a half. It's less black and white than, obviously, we thought it was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Benoit Sullivan-ish,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
I say, like, if you don't see your girlfriend for a year and a half and she's traveling with somebody she's very close with, it's entirely possible she'll fall out of love with you and something might happen with them. That's all this is. Like, I'm avidly Team Lita in this, in that, like, only one person really comes out of this badly, and it's her. Everyone else gets, like, a career renaissance out of this.
Edge becomes a megastar because of this. This makes Edge.
This is the greatest heel thing that has ever happened, and they milk it for all it's worth. Like, Lita gets a reputation as a slut that they never really let her shake.
Yeah.
Like, only now that she's, like, legend Lita do they, like, not openly mention this every time she's on TV. So Matt starts going on, like, Bite This, and he starts, like, posting stuff on his blog, and, like,
we can't even remember what he was using, because, like, YouTube doesn't exist yet. Maybe it was a MySpace page. I don't know.
I think he just had an early website.
Yeah, he just had a website, and he was posting some videos on there.
Yeah, he was just posting a bunch of videos where he just rants for, like, 30 minutes about, like,
weird videos of him, like, in a hot tub, like, clearly drunk,
like Lita's Amy's such a whore, what a bitch, how could she do this, I hate her forever, blah, 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 blah. And, like, to some extent it probably was real, because if you know anything about Matt Hardy, you know that he's a weirdo.
Yeah.
And, like, this isn't unusual compared to, like, stuff he would do later on. But at some point, someone in WWE realizes this is money. I don't know who that is, but somebody realizes it, right?
Yeah. I mean, they know they can't control the crowd reaction. The crowd is going to, chant "You screwed Matt" at Lita and Edge every time they're on screen, so you might as well just pair them together and make it the storyline.
So either A, like, what happens is Matt Hardy handles this breakup super poorly, does a bunch of unprofessional stuff, gets himself fired because of a human resources violation, and then somebody's like, hey, but we could make some money, get him back. Yeah. Or B, they specifically release him as, like, a wink-wink loose cannon Brian Pillman thing. We're like, hey, buddy, go down to Ring of Honor, who we have a working relationship with, and work there, and we'll keep putting your name on TV.
The fact that he goes to Ring of Honor and not TNA feels like the giveaway there, because TNA would have thrown money at him and given him a live mic.
Oh, they had to have offered him money. Like, hey, you want to bury everyone in the world?
Yeah, like, that would have been a good moment for him to go to TNA. That would have been big for them.
Yeah, not only does he just go to Ring of Honor, he doesn't work any indies. He, like, loses all his Ring of Honor matches. Like, everything about it sounds like, okay, WWE told Gabe Sapolsky, hey, you're going to have Matt Hardy on 3 of your shows.
Yeah. So he comes back on the July 11th episode of Raw, where he attacks Edge in a backstage segment, and he kind of he says something like, if you want to see me, tune into Ring of Honor. Says something like, I thought you were my friend Johnny Ace, like, very much going for a work shoot type of deal here. And they do a couple more of these where he'll run in from the crowd and attack Edge during his entrance, and then finally they officially bring him back on the August 1st Raw. They actually have Vince announce, like, his rehire in on Raw.
Now, the way that they were producing these segments was really smart.
Yeah.
Because literally it would just be like one of those like canned segments where like Edge and Lita are walking to the ring. It's like, all right, Edge is on his way to the ring. We're going to commercial right now. And then Matt Hardy would just like bum rush him out of a side hallway. And then they would like drag him outside because he wasn't supposed to be there. Like it felt real. Like it felt like very gritty in a good way. I felt like the second that they had him like actually be a part of the show again, it almost ruined it.
Yeah, well, it's in like, especially to have Vince. I mean, I get the whole like, oh, we want to make it a big deal by having Vince do it, but it's so establishment-y instead of like Edge getting in the ring and being like, Matt, I know you're here, like just get out here and let's do this, and like have Matt come in through the crowd and have him fight, and have Edge be like, give me a match with him. I want to fight him at SummerSlam.
Yeah. Like there's such an element of, you asked for Matt Hardy and now we're giving him to you. Aren't we nice?
Be careful what you wish for.
And that was, but the interesting thing about
a promo that, in your words, he buries himself.
It's so bad.
Awful promo.
And here's the problem, is that it's still Matt Hardy.
Yeah.
Is that no matter how much you heat up Matt Hardy and how much excitement you generate around Matt Hardy, at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, Matt, but it's still just Matt Hardy. He's not any more an interesting character now than he was before when he was going to get released for sucking. Like eventually he'll tap into this like weird, crazy part of himself and like make a lot of money out of it. And that's great. Like there's obviously much more good stuff left in Matt Hardy in the future. But at this point, this Matt Hardy sucks.
Yeah. So here he gets to take on Edge in a match that, I mean, I was very much anticipating this because I was just like, well, what are they going to do here? Like,
yeah, this was the real main event of this show. Like,
could this break down into a real fight? Like, seems plausible.
The other interesting part of this is that this is probably the first thing that like really showed that there was the internet wrestling community. Like,
yeah,
it had been fractured before, and there was some information. Like, everybody hated Triple H was a thing, but there wasn't like one united voice that we all communicated through. This was like the first thing that like all this extra info really showed that there was the internet wrestling community. Like,
yeah,
it had been fractured before, and there was some information. Like, everybody hated Triple H was a thing, but there wasn't like one united voice that we all communicated through. This was like the first thing that like all this extra information that wasn't really on screen disseminated through the entire community, and we all were on the same page of fuck Edge.
I guess message boards is what it was, because there's no Twitter at this point. WWE isn't on Facebook.
And like the reactions that it was getting were so loud and continuous that WWE literally listens to the internet fans for the first time here. Like, it's something. Like, it's definitely a forerunner of things to come. But like, it's the first time that voice is really heard.
And somehow, maybe the craziest thing of all on this show is the Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio ladder match for custody of Rey's son, Dominic.
Is it possible for a storyline to be both incredibly brilliant and outrageously ridiculous?
I mean, Eddie's performance is so brilliant here. I mean, this Eddie heel run, I think, had to be the best of his career.
Eddie Guerrero is tapping into levels of emotion that I'm not sure I'd ever seen.
It's scary
in a wrestling character before.
He's going to some dark places here.
And that's the thing. Like, this is a soap opera storyline, and in the hands of anyone but Eddie Guerrero, this doesn't work. It's a joke. It's laughable. We would hold it against them for the rest of their career. But for Eddie, like the idea that he can't beat Rey Mysterio gnaws at him to the extent that he literally decides that he's got to steal Rey's son from him. Yeah. He's got to expose an old family secret.
Reveal an awful secret that could destroy his family and Rey's.
And he doesn't care, because it doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters to him is beating Rey Mysterio.
There's so many things about this run. When he has a job match, and he puts Rey's mask on the jobber and just beats the shit out of him. till the guy is bloody.
Like, he rejiggers his entrance music so that, like, horrible cell phone noise is in the beginning.
Just brilliant heat.
I had to say, like, how do we make Eddie Guerrero, our most beloved star, unlikable? I know, cell phone ringtone, and it works.
The wordless promo where he just comes out and he doesn't say a word for, I don't know, at least 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Just won't say anything, and he just soaks in the booze from the crowd.
He goes to a place that only someone who has had, like, real demons, I think, could possibly go.
And this is based on the reality that Eddie did have a child while he was separated from his wife. He wrote about it in his book, and that was the inspiration, that, like, Ray's son Dominic was about the right age that it plausibly could be him.
Yeah, so what if what it was is that Ray was shooting blanks and he needed Eddie's help, but it was a secret, and they were best friends.
Yeah, Ray and his wife wanted to have a kid, and Eddie had a son and didn't want to raise him, so... Wait, was the implication... I never took it that Eddie had sex with Ray's wife.
No, I thought that he contributed the sperm, but it could be either. They don't really go into detail about that.
Yeah, I took it as, like, he impregnated some woman, and then him and the woman agreed that Ray would adopt the kid.
See, that's a little bit tenuous. They never go into the details of this, really, because the idea is, I don't think the idea was ever that Eddie would get full custody of Dominic, just that he would get partial,
Well,
and it would, like, break their family
match,
apart.
Of course you're going to get custody of the kid.
Yeah. I think your way probably actually makes more sense. So that makes a lot more sense. But they don't go into super detail about that because it's not the important part. But just, like, the evil in Eddie's voice, where he's just like, "Hey, Dominic,
tell you a bedtime story."
They have a match where, like, Eddie's like, "If you beat me, I won't tell this secret that will destroy you." And Ray beats him, and Eddie is so distraught, and then he fucking tells anyway. I lied.
The Eddie's the bedtime story segment, where all the lights are down in the arena, except he's in a spotlight in the middle of the ring, and he's got, like, an actual, like, child's book called, like, Eddie's Bedtime Story or something like that.
And I'll always wonder, like, obviously, the Dominic that they use here is Ray's actual son.
Yes, this is the actual Dominic, who is now a WWE wrestler.
Yes, and Eddie Guerrero is literally his godfather in real life. The emotions Dominic must have gone through during this storyline, because it's so personal.
Yeah, you don't imagine they, like, consulted a child psychologist to, like, find out whether this could, really screw the kid up, do you? Because I'm sure they didn't.
Because if you're Dominic, no matter how much they reassure you, you've got to look at Ray and be like, well, I'm already taller than him.
Yeah.
I guess maybe he's not my dad.
Just like the kids his age at school who watch wrestling probably don't understand that this is all a show.
And there are a lot of segments where, like, Eddie, who I'm sure has been a loving and, like, generous presence in Dominic's life his whole life, it literally looks at him in the eyes with these cold, dead serial killer eyes and say, "Come to Poppy." And, like, that's got to be so fucking troubling.
I can't believe they all agreed to do this.
But, like, bless them for it, because this is the most personality they ever get out of Ray. Like, this is maybe Ray's finest moment to some extent, and a lot of his promos still suck. Rey Mysterio doesn't get enough flack for being one of the worst promos in wrestling history.
Really is.
Even a storyline which is literally as personal as it could possibly be, you're really still getting, like, lame canned Rey Mysterio.
So Ray challenged Eddie to this match at SummerSlam, saying that if Eddie didn't accept, his son would know that his daddy was a chicken shit.
And, like, he had to find some way to get Eddie into this match, because Eddie was literally going to file for joint custody and take Dominic, and there's nothing they could do about it.
I don't think that's how that works.
I don't know.
You don't get to just go, unless this wasn't a real, I mean, maybe they didn't do a legal adoption here, but, like, you don't get to just go back on your adoption.
Well, that's why if he did have sex with Ray's wife, or if they like had the baby through sperm, there is some precedent to say that he could get at least joint custody through that, like depending on the court that you go to. And I think in the back of everyone's head, there's that part that's like, well, I know a lot of people have been screwed out of custody. I kind of get it. Like, it's probably gonna happen.
I mean, yeah, this is just the paradox of like the most insane, ridiculous storyline and just the greatest performance by Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie took this shit and elevated it into god tier status.
And we were just so robbed of getting more Eddie because he'll be dead in a few months after this.
And that's a shame. Like, his body obviously can't keep up anymore.
It's kind of hard to watch these matches with Ray because they just can't. They're trying to do the stuff they did in WCW and they can't anymore.
But the shame of it is that his storytelling ability gets so much better. Yeah. Like, he had so much more to offer in terms of storytelling. His body just couldn't keep up.
We haven't even talked about the world title matches.
Oh, yeah, there's one of those.
Yeah, we got John Cena versus Chris Jericho for the WWE title and Batista versus JBL for the world heavyweight title. But, I mean, compared to the rest of this, who really cares?
Yeah, don't worry. We're going to get into John Cena being booed, and we're going to get into Jericho's heel turn. Like, there's a million things on this show.
Yeah. Ooh. So, yeah, to get into the show, it's Sunday, August 21st, 2005. We're at the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. I don't think this was sold out. I feel like I caught some tarp in the upper deck on a few shots.
They advertise it as being 18,176, which I do not believe is a sellout in the MCI Center.
Couldn't find a gate. Yeah, I think the MCI Center holds over 20.
Yeah, I think it does.
Massive buy rate, 650,000 buys, huge success.
And I mean, you kind of get that because my question is, were the other pay-per-views in 2005 big successes? Because
WrestleMania did 1 million buys.
Well, that's my thing, is that this is the first time both WrestleMania and SummerSlam have been big since the Attitude Era. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like, they hit huge on the two biggest shows of the year. I don't know how the other shows did necessarily, but like,
I don't think Survivor Series. Well, yeah, I don't remember what Survivor Series had the Raw versus SmackDown.
Well, here's the fascinating thing, because the pay-per-view before this is Great American Bash 05, which is like one of the worst shows of all time. Yeah. And that is 233,000 buys, which sucks.
Yes, it does.
But it's also a SmackDown only pay-per-view. And the pay-per-view before that is Vengeance 05, which we've covered before, which is one of the best like brand only pay-per-views ever made. So I don't know. There's a wildly varying quality at this point.
On commentary, we've got the Raw team of Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler, and Jonathan Coachman. There was no need to have both Lawler and Coachman in this booth. Like, seems pretty clear they wanted Coach, but he wasn't good enough.
They flirt with that throughout like the entire year before this. Like they're not sure which one of JR or King they want to replace with Coach, but they're sure they want Coach. I don't know when exactly it is that they realize that that's a stupid ass idea and nobody wants Coach. But like, he's just an ill fit. And we've talked about this before. He's
never a good commentator.
There will never be a team that Jonathan Coachman works on because he's kind of half commentator, half play-by-play, but he's not good at either. So, like, he's an awkward fit with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at some point after this, they made him the Raw general manager, so that would be when they gave up on him on commentary.
Ironically, the best Jonathan Coachman on commentary is when he's by himself. Like, he did a couple shows where, like, JR and King would be, like, feuding with Muhammad Hassan and having a match or something. And he actually wasn't bad by himself.
Just doesn't have chemistry with anybody.
I think that's what it is.
And then the venerable SmackDown team of Michael Cole and Taz.
At this point, those two feel like they've been together for 50 years.
Yeah.
Not for much longer, though.
On Heat, Chris Masters defeated Rosie by submission in 1 minute and 56 seconds. What did Chris Masters have to do to get a pay-per-view match?
That's a really good question. You almost forget that he's here at this point because until like late 2005, he's not even on the radar.
Yeah, he's been around like this whole year and not wrestling on any pay-per-views.
Just doing Master Lock challenges. What did you think of Chris Masters?
I liked him. I mean, here he was not the greatest wrestler. The gimmick was fun though. I mean, I just like, I love a good big sculpted guy. And I dug the Master Lock challenge was some really good old school heat.
Yeah, like that was just such a nice old school thing. And it was just like a nice segment every week to be like, oh shit, here's the Master Lock challenge. He's gonna choke out some jobber.
Yeah.
And then just progressively getting to better and better people. They definitely fucked up the Master Lock challenge and did not do that the way that they should have. But, I am a diehard Chris Masters fan, but not this Chris Masters. I love slim down off the roids Chris Masters.
Yeah, when he turned into an awesome wrestler.
Yeah, when he turned into Ric Flair overnight.
We cut straight into the arena where Lillian Garcia performs the Star Spangled Banner. I guess this is because it's in Washington, D.C. Oh, also, they wanted to show they didn't hate America after the Muhammad Hassan terrorist angle. Let's talk about that.
Hey, guys, they did a terrorist angle. Like, we haven't really talked a ton about Muhammad Hassan. There's not really... He wasn't really on that many pay-per-views because the character only basically exists for less than a year.
Yeah, it was around like 6 months. He debuted at like very end of '04, and he's done here after the ill-timed terrorist angle.
They go all in. Like, at first, it doesn't seem like they're going to go all the way there, and he's just kind of an American-hating guy. Like, his character as a Muslim who has been treated poorly from 9/11, and now he's bitter at the country because they turned on him.
In some way kind of progressive. It's at least reasonable. Like, it's an understandable motivation.
Yeah, those early promos were very good. We're just like, hey, I grew up in Detroit. I was just like you. I played in the streets. Went to the Ice Cream Man. Everything was great. Yeah. But then 9/11 happened, and you guys started looking at me differently. Like, my uncle's business closed down. I get death threats in the streets. Like, it's not cool. And, like, I can't support this country anymore.
And so he became a jerk, not a terrorist.
Yes, that was his thing, is that he would come out and interrupt people because fuck you, it's my time.
With the music that drew so much heat.
There was a point at which, like, literally, like, every time one of my friends would be, like, on, like, some big rambling monologue about something, I would just pull out the theme song and interrupt them with it. It's great music. That was a banger theme.
So he's on Raw for a few months, and, like, he gets to feud with Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels, so there's that. And then they move him to SmackDown, and he is primed for a main event push. He was going to get Batista here at SummerSlam for the world title.
You can easily see him getting the title. He's not great in the ring, but he is more than good enough. Yeah. Like, and, like, the heat that he was generating is unlike anything that they had in a very long time. And it's unfortunate because it's one of those things that when you go back and watch it, it really reminds you, like, this fan base sucks.
Yes.
But
so
heat is heat.
But
they go so much further.
He was feuding with The Undertaker. This was to get him ready for Batista. He was going to beat The Undertaker at the Great American Bash to get to be #1 contender for SummerSlam. So we talked about how they had a Raw on July 4th. SmackDown, they taped the next day, July the 5th. On that SmackDown, they did an angle where, like, Undertaker beat up Daivari, and then Hassan came out to make the save, and then a bunch of dudes in, like, kind of like what you would think of if you were going to picture a terrorist in 2005. Like, we've seen the beheading videos that you would see from Al-Qaeda, etc. back then. black long sleeve shirts, ski masks, camo pants. A bunch of these dudes run out, they beat up the Undertaker, and they choke him out with piano wire. And then they carry Daivari out, like with his arms spread, like a martyr.
Literally like a crucifix martyr pose.
Yeah, like they can say whatever they want, that like whatever this was supposed to be. Like there's no question what imagery this was evoking.
And like they obviously the reason that this gets so much heat is because what they in between taping it and it airing, the London terrorist bombings happened.
Yes. So they taped this on 7/5, July 5th. The bombings are on 7/7 in London, I believe in the early hours of the morning, that morning. So like mid-afternoon in the United States, if I have the time difference right.
Yeah.
Or overnight. I'm blanking on which direction the time change goes there. But like by this point, they have already, like, I don't know enough about TV production to quite understand. I believe this may have already aired some places by this point.
I think so. I think some places it did air on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah. They would maintain it was too late to cut this out. They had already sent, I don't imagine they're sending a tape at this point, but however they were broadcasting this, it's too late for them to cut this by this point. So this airs the same day that there's this bombing in the subway in London that kills, I don't remember how many people, a few dozen, I think.
And like, it would have been extraordinarily tasteless and people would have spoken out about it hugely, even if that hadn't happened. Yeah. So it's not like they treat it like that's the only reason that they had to get rid of Muhammad Hassan. But the truth is that they blew it. Like there's a line you can't cross with a character like that, and they blatantly cross it.
Yeah, this was still going to be a problem for them no matter what. But I think this was going to be something that, like, the character could have survived. Like, it would have been more like Pillman Gun angle-ish, where they would have, like, apologized for it and never shown it again and moved on.
But instead, like, literally, they get heat from every media company on Earth for this.
Yeah. I think UPN calls Vince and is like, Muhammad Hassan can never appear on our TV again. And they were leaving UPN at this point anyway, but like USA said the same thing. Like, we will never use this character. Like, he's got nowhere to go. They just have to write the character out.
Because especially like once you take a character and you openly make him a terrorist, like how do you come back from that?
Yeah.
Like you can't pull that back. Like you're literally now he's involved with a terrorist organization. That's what you're saying on screen. You can't do that.
Yeah. So he didn't appear on the subsequent SmackDown, which was the go home for the Great American Bash. At the Great American Bash, the Undertaker hit him with the last ride like through the stage, and he was never seen or referenced again.
Buried for real.
Yeah.
And, like, that poor guy, like, Mark Copani, the actual Italian man who portrayed Muhammad Hassan,
Italian guy from New Jersey,
really did a great job with that character. It's not his fault. Like, he took that character to really interesting places and, like, made something of it. Like, he chewed up the scenery as Muhammad Hassan. Like, he had a future in the business. And 3 months later, he's in Hollywood trying to get a writer job because they had to force fire him and he could never work in the business again.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you the person who booked it didn't get fired, Bruce.
No. Bruce or Michael Hayes or whoever.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, having to blame him for the sins of, like, the writer's room really sucks.
All right. So instead of, Batista versus Muhammad Hassan, they stretched the JBL feud an extra month, which I don't think anybody needed to see.
No, there's no heat on this whatsoever. Like, this is...
Nobody buys that JBL could beat Batista.
Poor Batista and his poor cursed run as the top guy of SmackDown. He just can't get a pay-per-view match worth a damn.
Yeah, he gets to work with Eddie once. And they have this big storyline set up where Eddie's going to be his friend, and then he's going to turn on him, and Eddie dies.
Yup.
And then set up the hot feud with Mark Henry, and he gets hurt.
The important thing to remember is, though, that we're in the same year. We're not 4 months removed from Batista being the hottest thing on planet Earth.
Man, and now, kind of who cares?
It's already over. Like, all the air's out. It sucks.
So, after the national anthem, we go to the opening package, which just kind of runs through the big matches of the night. And then the announcers welcome us to the show. Opening match for the United States Championship. We've got Orlando Jordan defending against Chris Benoit. You might recall this match. You might have seen the entire match in GIF form.
I really think this was like right when GIFs were becoming like a huge part of like internet forums. And like I swear this is the first time that anyone had ever GIFed an entire match in one.
Yeah. Because the entire match is 23 seconds.
And I have to briefly deviate at this point to bring up a fact that some of you know, which is that there was a time where I thought Orlando Jordan was legitimately a potential megastar. I wasn't right.
I see the potential there. He's got a great body, good look, some charisma, but just never really put it together as a wrestler or promo.
And he's super green here. Like, he's still very much like an OVW talent that they gave very little to. But like when he makes his entrance here, there's something there.
Yeah.
Like, he's got this great entrance theme. When it comes to cars, I do a big... Like, I love that entrance theme. And he's like, he's looking real good. He's confident. He's like picking his hair out. Like, he looks like a future star.
He's been the U.S. champ for like 6 months at this point. He took the belt off Cena before WrestleMania.
Yeah. And he's like just growing into this character that exists outside of JBL, because but up to this point he's just been like JBL's butler basically. They do him dirty here. Like they must not have seen anything in him.
He beat Benoit the month before this at Great American Bash, which you better believe made me real salty. That whiny little smart mark I was back then.
Exactly. But like, and I'm not mad about this match per se. And we've talked before, like, it's okay to do a job that's really quick. If it's just like, well, like you threw your best shot at him, but like he caught you unawares and he caught you and it's over. Like, that's okay. And we wish there was more stuff like that in wrestling. Like, not every match has to be 20 minutes. Sometimes you just get caught.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's the fact that they did this like 3 more times.
Yeah, okay. So, to recap the match, Benoit has promised to make Jordan tap out. Jordan has promised to knock Benoit out. They lock up. Jordan gets Benoit with a jab. He throws a big right hook. Benoit ducks it. Benoit hits a German suplex, then locks on the crippler crossface. Jordan taps in just 23 seconds.
Which is, like, I don't even think that this is necessarily a burial, especially since, like, Jordan, like, caught him with a cheap shot, did his little Muhammad Ali dance, then he got caught by Benoit 20 seconds. That was pretty great. It was a great little moment.
Yeah.
That's fine. But, like, on every show for the next 3 months, he gets jobbed out in 20 seconds.
They proceed to do this where, like, each time Jordan's like, you know, tonight's going to be my night, and then Benoit taps him out even faster.
And, like, I get that this gets so over with the live crowd. I get them being like, well, let's run it back. Do it again. That's fine. You can't do this more than once in a row. Like, they kill Orlando Jordan beyond any possibility of recovery with this. It sucks.
We then go backstage to Eddie Guerrero and Vicky, who we've recently been introduced to. Eddie says they're done talking. Vicky says she's not done talking. She says this isn't about Dominic. All Eddie cares about is beating Rey. Eddie snaps. He says what he wants is someone who can carry on the Guerrero legacy. Vicky says Eddie has a heart of gold, which Eddie agrees with.
There's this great dichotomy in this segment where, like, Eddie is, whenever Rey's name comes up, his face visibly darkens.
Yeah.
And but the rest of the time, he's just like having like a friendly chat with his wife. She's like, "For Eddie, you have a heart of gold." And he's like, "Who, me?" And he's like doing that charming thing where he's like, "Oh yeah, I do have a heart of gold. Yeah, you're right." And then, but like she'll say like Ray's name, and he'll just suddenly like storm clouds on his face.
Face just turns to stone. Like it's clear this is just the dark cloud hanging over him.
And like she gives this passionate monologue about how like I love you and Ray's part of our family and you can't do this to him. And then he like nods like he's paying attention and he's listening and he's like takes it in for a moment. He's like, "So you think I can't beat Rey Mysterio too? Is that right?"
Yeah, yeah. And he just snaps and he says like, if she doesn't believe in him, she needs to get out.
He's just sick in his head.
Yeah,
he can't see anything else.
He's just obsessed with beating Rey. It's overtaken him.
But I love them establishing Vicky in this way because she's been around a couple of times, I feel like, just as like, this is Eddie's wife. She's cheering for him. Yay. But like this moment of just like, you have to show some humanity in Eddie so he's not like a cartoon character. And like bringing out that side of him really makes it even more.
To me, it makes him darker that we can see that like he has the capacity to be a good man. He's just choosing not to.
And like, she can reach him, but like even his obvious love for her is not enough. Like it's just not enough.
So next, we've got Matt Hardy versus Edge. Buckle in, this is going to be interesting. Edge is out first with Lita. Lots of heat for them.
They are the two best looking people who have ever walked the face of the earth. Holy shit. Wow.
Pretty good pop for Matt, but not like a main event reaction.
It's so funny how quickly the airs come out of him. It really is. Like he's still just Matt Hardy. He's got the same music. He looks the same. Like this would have been a good time for him.
He's in shape here. He's gotten into shape.
Yeah, but it would have been a good time for him to like freshen up his look, like new haircut, new gear, like something.
Yeah. They hockey fight out on the floor right off the bat. All punches, no grappling, which is what you want to see here. That's what it should be. Loud Hardy chants. Matt gets Edge in a choke. He breaks it when Edge gets a foot on the ropes. Edge spears Matt through the ropes and off the ring apron to the floor. Matt goes for a 10 punch. Edge drops him on the ring post. That's the turning point in the match as that opens up a cut above Hardy's head. Edge just works the forehead with punches. Knees to the head, kicks to the head, and the referee stops the match after 5 minutes.
The liquid anger that drained onto wrestling forums after this.
Just unbelievable heat, and like not the good kind.
Now here's the thing. They were right.
No, they were right to have Edge win. Edge should have won because Lita screwed Matt over. That's where you get heat. This killed the feud.
But here's the thing, they want to kill the feud. Like, they don't want this to be an ongoing thing. It
goes on for several months after. I mean, it doesn't end right here. They get 3 more matches out of it.
Right. But they already start, like, moving Edge on to other stuff, too. Like, Edge, they already see Edge as world champion soon. And so, like, I don't know. I guess if you're trying to get more money out of this, but I don't ever think that they thought that this was a money thing. They felt that they had to put it on because the fans demanded it.
Yeah.
And they thought maybe they could just kind of kill it off by having Edge job him out here.
Which they pretty much did, because, yeah, hard for Matt to come back from this.
But, like, let's say Matt wins this match.
I wouldn't have had him win.
Yeah, but, like, let's say Matt wins the feud even. Like, there's no future in Matt Hardy.
I would have had him win the feud there. I would have had him lose here, win the second match, and then Edge wins the third match to win the feud.
That's fair. And, like, I definitely see what you're saying. This is also a very lame finish. Like, they're trying to establish...
They never do stoppages.
They're trying to establish that it's such a brutal match that Matt just has to pass out. Maybe if this is, like, 40 minutes long, and it's one of those, like, brutal brawls, like barbed wire and the whole deal, maybe you get it then. But literally, like, Edge just kicks him in his head 20 times, and he's done.
Yeah, like, it wasn't even that good a kick. It wasn't like a Randy Orton punt or anything.
Though the shit-eating grin on Edge's face as he walks away. Ah, boy. And like Lita's not even really, she's barely involved in this, which is weird.
Yeah.
Unless somebody backstage asked them not to be much involved with each other. This may also have been a test for Matt. Like, okay, we're going to bring you back.
Yeah.
Are you going to do business? Because if you shoot on Edge, you're done.
Yeah. The theme song tonight is Remedy by Seether.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember this song, and maybe it's just from this show.
I mean, just this random butt rock of just like these songs that suck outside of WWE, but just like any sort of driving guitar riff goes with wrestling. It just works, you know what I mean?
This
it
is
goes
the
hand
kind
in
of
hand.
stuff I listened to growing up.
Yeah, we were lame.
We were. Next up, we've got the Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio ladder match. Of course, to reiterate, the winner of the match gets custody of Rey's son, Dominic. Michael Cole says, for the first time in the history of WWE, the custody of a child will be determined in a match. Thanks, Michael Cole.
He says it like he's proud of it. Like,
wow, we got an interesting fact here.
Really? We've never done that before?
Wow.
That's so weird.
Hard to imagine.
The entire time I watched this match, I always just imagined the judge who has to sit at court when Rey Mysterio comes in. It's just like, okay, so Eddie Guerrero requested custody, but I won a ladder match against him and had the custody paper, so don't worry about that. We can cancel it.
Judge Mills Lane.
I'll allow it.
The thing you have to understand is wrestling is really all about contract law.
That's really what we've established, is that Steve Austin was just a pioneer of contract law in wrestling. This is just contract law.
As determined in the case of Austin v. McMahon.
Money in the Bank is just contract law.
I mean, rewatching the Attitude Era, like nearly every single Raw revolves around contracts in some way or another.
There are whole months that are just basically about Vince McMahon v. the labor force and forming unions, only to have like the Pinkertons come in and break them up.
The Undertaker and Kane are Vince's Pinkertons.
The fucking Pinkertons.
Not gonna be a union over my dead body.
What? Rocket Man kind of working together? Fire them!
Oh, Eddie comes out to the cell phone theme looking absolutely psychotic.
There's just something about Eddie Guerrero when he's a heel where he just slows down all of his mannerisms. Like when he's a babyface, like he never stops moving. He's like constant kinetic motion and he's smiling and like appealing to the crowd. But when he's a heel, he just walks so slowly and so deliberately with this just evil look on his face that he feels scary. Like there's just something off about this person.
Ray comes out with, not doing his normal entrance, no real emotion here. He goes to the front row to, give his son a hug. So Eddie has to go do the same thing.
And just like he goes over there and he's like giving a sheeting grin to Ray. And then he's like, "Come here, Dominic. Come here." And Dominic's
I'm your poppy.
He's like, "No, you're scary." Also, Dominic, there are no good child actors really. But Dominic sucks. Like this, I hate to heckle like a 9-year-old kid, but man, he does a shitty job.
I shouldn't have smartened the kid up. Then he would have shown some real emotion.
If this had been like the set of a movie, they definitely would not have smartened him up. It's like, hey, you see Eddie over there, your godfather? Really? But Dominic sucks. Like this, I hate to heckle like a 9-year-old kid, but man, he does a shitty job.
I shouldn't have smartened the kid up. Then he would have shown some real emotion.
If this had been like the set of a movie, they definitely would not have smartened him up. It's like, hey, you see Eddie over there, your godfather? He's your real father, and he's taking custody of you.
And he's actually kicking the shit out of your dad right now.
If he wins this match, you got to go live with him in a trailer.
Because he's going to lose all his money in his divorce.
Yeah, and he's going to take all your toys and sell them for crack.
I'm your poppy. I love you, Dominic.
And that's really the biggest problem with this match. Well, aside from the fact that it's just cursed beyond all
Oh, this
recognition.
match is fucking horrible.
But like,
I don't know if anybody just like assumes that like Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero can't have a bad match, but boy, this fucking sucks.
a lot of it is just basic chance. Like, these guys don't really. Eddie does a lot of ladder matches, but that's not really Rey's deal. And like, there's a lot of like ladders falling and like clumsy accidents and stuff. That's just shit that can happen, you know.
Keep trying to do this sunset flip powerbomb spot, and they can't do it because Rey is too short. His legs don't touch the ground when he does the sunset flip.
That's the problem. It's like he can't pull it off.
Like, they do it literally 3 times. The third time they finally hit it. The first 2 times, Eddie just like eats shit off the ladder and almost dies.
And the whole crowd is just like,
Oh. They actually do a "you fucked up" chant, which like you can just see the rage simmering in Eddie as that's going on.
And large parts of this match depend heavily on Dominic and Vicky Guerrero, who are not performers. And like, yeah, the finish is cursed. Maybe the most cursed finish I've ever seen in a wrestling match. It gets fucked up like 10 different ways.
Ironically, 2 weeks ago we did SummerSlam 95. If you thought that was the worst a ladder match finish could be blown.
Here we go.
I mean, so they have the match. I mean, we talked about the blown sunset flip powerbomb spots. The first one is not good. The second one is horrible as like Eddie just ends up falling right onto the ladder.
Yep.
Eddie looks like he's going to win. Dominic gets in the ring and he tries to shake the ladder. Do you think he was actually supposed to dump the ladder here? Or was he supposed to not be strong enough?
I think he's supposed to not be strong enough because Eddie has all these great lines where like he's like just looking at Dominic like, "What do you think you're doing? You can't do that. I'm your dad." And like he's like screaming at Dominic from the ladder, and like you can see on Dominic's face that like however much they prepared him for this, they did not prepare him for being screamed at by Eddie Guerrero
in front of this giant crowd that's roaring. Like, tough spot to put a kid in.
Yeah, like the most pressure any 9-year-old has ever been under.
Rey hits Eddie with the 619 into the ladder, drops the dime. He climbs, but Eddie cuts him off. They finally manage to do the sunset flip powerbomb successfully on their third try.
At that point, I think it's just Eddie being petty, where he's just like literally like, "We're doing this fucking thing."
Cares at this point? Like, it's not that impressive a spot.
And they like for a ladder match, they don't really have that many like cool spots set out, which is fine because that's
try. It's not that kind of match.
Yeah, that's not really what this is.
Rey is all alone at the top, but Eddie manages to kick the ladder out from under him. Rey is left hanging from the briefcase. Rey drops down because he's too short for Eddie to pull him off, and Eddie catches him out of the air with the power bomb. That was perfect.
This is not only picture perfect, maybe the most brutal power bomb anyone's ever taken.
Stank on this power bomb.
There's a version of this where like you catch him and then you hold him for a minute and then you drop him. That is not what Eddie does. Eddie grabs his hips as he's falling and propels him faster into the ground.
Yeah. Eddie climbs. This time Rey kicks the ladder out from under him, so Eddie is hanging from the briefcase. Rey gets the ladder and knocks Eddie off the ladder. Eddie manages to drop Rey. He climbs the ladder. Vicky runs out and does her best to push the ladder down.
Okay. Now, her cue was actually to come out before that, because she was supposed to run out before Eddie got the ladder taken out from under him and he was hanging from it. That was improvisation.
Wow.
So you can actually hear, like on Botchamania, they did like a thing where you could actually hear Eddie yelling, "Where's Vicky?" Because he just stands at the top fiddling with the belt for like a solid 30 seconds. So they just have to figure something out. So everything from this point on is improvisation because Vicky blew her spot. So then when Eddie like hits the ground, like he hits it on like one leg and crumples up, and you can see he's furious. Furious.
Rey climbs. Eddie tries to knock him off, but Vicky like tackles him and holds him down, which, sure.
Like, what it's supposed to be is she's supposed to like get him out of the ring, but like she doesn't, and she forgets to hold on to him too. So he's like holding himself back with her, and it looks like shit.
Was she supposed to push him off the ladder and he could like crash and burn all the way down to the floor?
Yes. So he's on top of the ladder and she goes to push the ladder.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to like gently and like thoroughly push it. And then you've seen that spot a million times. He bounces off the ropes and then he hits the floor. But
falls ironically right on his nuts.
Yeah, he pushes it. She pushes it way too hard. So he literally goes toppling off of it and hits the ropes head first.
Jesus Christ.
And he's livid.
Yeah, not acting.
Like, literally every single thing about this match is destroyed. It's a joke. And he knows it.
Look, yeah, I mean, this match was bad. Like, it was awful.
I think this is maybe the worst match Eddie Guerrero ever had in his entire career.
It's...
Because there aren't a lot of bad ones to choose from.
When did Eddie Guerrero ever have a bad match? And this is one of the highest profile matches he had. And it sucked.
And it's funny, too, because that same insanity that drove Chris Benoit to be perfect in every respect, Eddie had that, too. You just don't think about it that way.
Yeah.
But, like, there's a reason why people get to be this good at wrestling. You have to be insane. And so to see him have to deal on like the biggest stage possible after this like 6-month-long storyline, and this is the blow off, and they fuck it up. So
they would actually have another match after this. They did a cage match on the debut of SmackDown on whichever channel they were moving to. I can't remember what it was. Eddie cut one of my favorite promos of his before that cage match, where he is like behind like a metal fence and he's just like talking about how like Ray has cost him everything, that like his family's left him. He's got nothing left to lose tonight. Just like he's like a caged animal.
How do they come out of this storyline? Like, how do they make Eddie a real person again?
Well, so he wrestles Batista at No Mercy. And Batista beats him, and then Eddie like shakes his hand, and him and Batista become friends, and Eddie goes back to being a face, and he's Batista's friend, and like I think we all know that was going to end with Eddie turning on Batista.
Yeah, they had already done like some stuff to indicate that, and to indicate that Batista knew he was going to turn on him.
That's the fun part,
because Batista's the thinking man's monster.
I always assumed there was another bedtime story coming where Eddie was going to tell the story of when Batista killed a man.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I don't know if that was an actual rumor or just something I invented.
Hey, guys, did you guys know that Batista killed a man?
Yeah. I don't know why he didn't do prison time for that.
Yeah.
It was ruled self-defense. But yeah, I think it was a fight when he was a bouncer at a nightclub.
I mean, Washington, D.C. in the early thousands, you could get away with anything.
Backstage, Todd Grisham interviews Chris Jericho. Jericho says tonight his time is now to win the title from Cena.
This Jericho turn never quite clicked for me, but the promos are pretty good.
He's on his way out. He's putting Cena over and then he's leaving.
If you were watching during this point, this is the most stale Chris Jericho ever was. Like, he had not had any sort of character.
Nothing for like a year at this point before he turns heel.
He was like the 5th babyface on Raw. Yeah. And he was just there. He never won any of his matches. He was just around.
Next up, we've got Kurt Angle versus Eugene. What is happening here?
The funny thing is that Eugene genuinely had a moment where he was over.
Yeah, a year before this.
Yeah, this is largely because anybody who came in contact with Evolution during that time got over. Like, they were just a heat factory. And then he gets hurt at New Year's Revolution, and he gets like bad hurt, so he's going to be out for a couple months. You would have assumed that that would have been a good time to change that character, right?
His character, yeah, you would.
Yeah,
think.
all the life was already out of it. By then, he was wrestling in tags with Regal against like La Resistance. There was no future in the character. But they run it back anyway, and by the time he comes back, there's no room left in this company for Eugene. Whereas Kurt Angle is now on his "how many pills can I take to get me to the next town" tour.
Yeah, Kurt is not doing well physically, which is I think why they gave him this match instead of something serious, and there just really wasn't anything for him at the moment.
They do say something interesting in the run up to this match, which is that Kurt Angle has never lost a singles match at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
And I looked into that, and it's accurate.
Yeah, beat Austin by DQ in 2001. He beat Ray in 2002. He beat Lesnar to win the title in 2003, and he beat Eddie the year before this. It's a pretty impressive run.
And this is his last SummerSlam match. So, yeah, the only match he ever loses at SummerSlam in his entire career is the triple threat that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Which he probably should have won.
In the lead up to this, Angle was doing this thing where, like, I think it was if anybody could last 5 minutes with him, they'd win his gold medals.
Yes. Yes, it was.
This is where we saw Matt Stryker debut.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So Stryker had gotten some national coverage because he was a teacher and he was like calling in sick to do wrestling shows. He'd like call in sick on Friday so he could travel to do an indie show over the weekend, and he got found out and fired.
He got found out because one of the superintendent's like kids or something saw him at a wrestling show. I was like, wait, that's
Mr. I don't know his real name.
It's Mr. Stryker.
That's not his real name.
No, it's not.
But yeah, I mean, that got like national coverage, and I'm sure, somebody on the writing team just like read about it in USA Today or whatever and was like, what if we used that guy?
And I mean, it turned out that he was a pretty good talent. He could talk. Like, there's no reason not to use him, really.
Yeah. Ooh. So we get this match. Eugene managed to go the distance and win Kurt's gold medals. Kurt is coming for revenge here. Kurt hits a big German suplex. Eugene comes back, hits a stunner for a 2 count. Angle hits the angle slam, drops the straps, locks on the ankle lock, and Eugene taps out. Not much to that. It was less than 5 minutes. After the match, Kurt sets up a chair in the ring, and he makes the referee present him with his gold medals.
Love that.
Then we get a gratuitous segment where all the divas are in bikinis washing Vince's limousine.
This is... Okay, was this something... Like, why... So let me paint you a word picture. Like,
Was this the year they did the Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view with Bischoff? Or that happened already?
That happened already.
Okay, I don't know then.
Okay, so let me paint you a word picture. So we're watching, I think it's Maria and Candace and Stacy Keibler as they're like soaping up a limousine and washing it and spraying each other with water. You've seen it all before. I'm not going to describe the boobies to you. But like we slowly pan across the limousine as all these attractive women are soaping up and washing this limo until finally we get to the door, which has the presidential seal on it. And then the window rolls down and Vince McMahon looks at the camera and he just, in the most shit-eating grin way, says like, hey, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the most self-serving things that's ever aired on television.
Ooh, we elected Donald Trump president instead.
But like, was that a thing at this point? Like, were we making fun of somebody with this? It just seems apropos of nothing.
Nothing jumps out at me here, because, like, I mean, Jesse Ventura is years before this. I mean, Jesse was always teasing he was going to run for president, but...
So, like, maybe that was in the media or something. Like, this had to have been a direct response to something.
Yeah. I mean, Jesse had been teasing... I mean, Jesse did the tease at WrestleMania the year before this with Trump that he was going to run for president.
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever it was, this is... really silly. Like deeply egomaniacal that you would even Like, imagine that you're like Stephanie and Shane sitting backstage with the writers, or you're like Linda watching this with like the board of directors, and you're like, well, that's my dad slash husband, and that's what he does on television. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, 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 yep. Next up, we've got The Undertaker versus Randy Orton in a WrestleMania rematch. Orton has been out most of the time since WrestleMania with an injury. He, wrestled Batista the night after on Raw and then went away for a while. Undertaker was, of course, feuding with Muhammad Hassan. I assume the original plan was that Orton was going to interfere in that match and cost Undertaker.
I mean, that makes total sense. I'm really happy that they like kind of ran it back with Orton and Undertaker because they definitely weren't done. Like they had a lot more in the tank.
Absolutely.
And that WrestleMania match is so fucking good.
Cole early in the match says Orton's been utilizing the side headlock a lot as of late. No shit.
There's probably people out there who don't remember Randy Orton headlock enthusiast.
Headlock Randy Orton.
Somebody backstage, and I wish I could remember who it was, but like he was trying to get heat because he had just turned heel again, and like he wasn't the legend killer anymore, so he had to kind of find a new way to get heat. And they were just like, why don't you just lock on a headlock? And if they start booing, you just lock it on more. And he really took that to heart. He would do like 5-minute long headlock segments.
Yeah, if the crowd chanted boring, he'd just lock it in tighter.
And like there was a genius to it because it worked.
It was real heat.
And something about Randy Orton doing a headlock is unlike anyone else who's ever done a headlock. Like he would put so much stank on his headlocks. He would just like constantly be moving and wrenching and leaning and like propelling them across the ring and holding it. Like he really got everything you can get out of a headlock.
Taker catches Orton with a big boot, gets him in a Kimura. Taker goes for old school, but Orton counters with an arm drag. He then clips Taker's knee, goes to work on it for a while, hits an absolutely beautiful power slam. That
amazing.
To get a guy who's 300 plus pounds over like that is impressive.
I was always really impressed by the way that he worked with Taker. Because you can forget that Randy Orton's big.
He is a big dude. I mean, that's, again, it's funny who's considered a big man in wrestling and who's not. Because, like, obviously Randy Orton is not as tall as The Undertaker, but, like, they're closer in height than you would think.
And, like, you never really think of Randy Orton as being, like, a strong dude. But he's, he manhandles Taker many times.
And Taker's working here. Taker, I think, is clearly enjoying getting to work with somebody who's not a stiff.
Yeah, because he's been wrestling he goes through the whole Heidenreich feud at the beginning of this year. Like
suffered through that.
To get to work with Orton after that is a dream.
Yeah. Taker makes a comeback. He hits the apron leg drop, which further exacerbates his knee injury. Then old school, which hurts his knee even more.
LOL. Like, what are you doing, buddy?
He hits Snake Eyes. He goes for the big boot, but Orton catches him with a drop kick. Orton goes for the RKO, but Taker blocks it. Taker goes for the tombstone. Orton reverses it. Taker reverses it. Orton slips out, hits that, backbreaker thingy he would do.
That move is one of the worst moves anyone would regularly do.
Why are you dropping their spine on your spine?
And, like, the crowd would never respond to it because, like, nobody could ever take it right. Because basically you're just blindly falling backwards. The idea is that, like, it's supposed to be, like, you grab, like, a headlock on them, and then you, like, wrench their neck on your shoulder. But it just never looked right.
Orton hits a cross body from the top rope, but Taker rolls through it and goozles him, then hits the choke slam. At this point, a fan jumps in the ring. The referees force him out. That gives Taker or Orton enough time to catch Taker with the RKO and get the pin to score the upset. The fan is eventually revealed to be Cowboy Bob Orton in disguise.
And like one of those Mission Impossible masks that's
Why
just
did
like
they bother with
latex.
the mask?
Nobody knows what Bob Orton looks like,
That's
guys.
the
It's been
thing.
30
Like,
years.
yeah, like they eventually, it takes forever to get enough of the mask off him to even see who it is.
They bring in Cowboy Bob. What do you think about Cowboy Bob?
It was to try to keep from being less of a shithead by having his dad watch him.
And ostensibly it worked. Of course, it's difficult to separate Cowboy Bob coming in from the fact that he wrestles with hepatitis C and doesn't tell anybody.
God, I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
That's not awesome.
Well, apparently he told Johnny Ace, and then Johnny Ace didn't tell anybody because I think he probably just didn't grasp how serious that was.
That's a billion times worse.
Yeah. Orton, he blades in the Taker Randy Hell in a Cell match.
Yes. They all blade.
Yeah.
So like all of their blood mixes together.
Jesus Christ. I mean, this is the thing I just remember thinking about. I would think about this all the time back when there was so much blood. I was like, do they get tested all the time for stuff, or do they just not care?
Like, I don't think like Taker's getting drug tested at this point.
I mean, tested for HIV, hepatitis, other bloodborne illnesses. Like,
Man,
these guys just bleed all over each other.
And that's one of the reasons that I'm very happy that like blading kind of went away a lot in wrestling. It's still okay in some spots, especially when you can like regulate it beforehand. But like the idea that someone could have a bloodborne illness and then go into a match and blade with other guys who are also blading while your management knows he has it.
It's astoundingly irresponsible. And you just think about like in basketball, somebody gets a little like nick on their arm, they have to come out of the game until they're bandaged up and not bleeding anymore.
If this is anybody but Taker, it's a lawsuit that hurts this company.
I mean, in combat sports, guys do bleed on each other.
Right. But I mean, like,
happen.
It's more the fact that Johnny Ace knew.
Yeah.
And like, ostensibly, like, that's your like human resources person that you go to. Like, that's the person who's supposed to be protecting you from this.
These carny morons.
Like, if this had been, because like CM Punk winds up filing that lawsuit against WWE for like shitty medical practices, which we all know that WWE has shitty medical practices. I
thought it was actually he got sued there. He got sued for defamation for what he said about the doctor.
Right. And then they kind of like tried to sue and counter sue each other, and then they just dropped it. But if he had had evidence like this, if this had happened to CM Punk, he would own WWE.
Earlier in the show, they had referenced that Hillary Clinton's staff was in the crowd. Here they show that Ken Melman, the chairman of the Republican National Committee at the time, and former RNC chair Ed Gillespie are both in the crowd.
A lot of Republican jabronis in the crowd.
Of course, Coach says he knows both of them. Of course, Coach is a Republican.
That surprises no
one. Yeah. They show the video package for Cena versus Jericho, and then we see Eric Bischoff wish Jericho good luck. And then for the WWE Championship, we've got John Cena defending against Chris Jericho. So, of course, Cena debuted on Raw all the way back in June as a guest on Jericho's highlight reel. Jericho turned heel on Cena. Cena was able to retain the title in a triple threat match at Vengeance against both Jericho and Christian, and here we get a one-on-one match because Christian has been moved to SmackDown. I think just about everybody wanted to see Christian get the shot here, but it wasn't in the cards. Christian not booked on this show, despite being one of the most popular wrestlers in the company.
Yeah, he just couldn't catch a break, man. All through this year, he had just been building so much momentum. He built this great character. He did everything that you could ask him to do. He grabbed that proverbial brass ring, and then it got to the point where like Vince had to push him, and he was like, ew, him?
Was he the first guy they ever got mad at for getting himself over? Do you
I
think
don't
this was
think
the
he's
first time this happened?
I don't think he's the first, but he's probably the most notable example of like, you were just supposed to be a shitty little mid-carder. Why is
I,
everyone chanting your name?
I think Zack Ryder's got to be the most. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't bury Christian the way they truly buried Zack Ryder.
Vince held it against Zack Ryder that he had to push him because of the fans. Like, he literally held it against him for the remainder of his career.
Which, like, is so weird, because what's wrong with Zack Ryder? He's got this. Seems like he's got the look Vince would like.
He's got the look, he's got personality. The fan base never stopped liking him.
Wasn't a great wrestler, but
I mean,
when has that ever mattered in WWE?
He's legit like 6 feet. Like, he's tall for a guy these days.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's literally just that he had the temerity to go on the internet and get over.
Cena mostly gets cheered, but there's some boos starting to creep in. Jericho mostly gets cheered.
We kind of got to talk about the storyline that came into this, because it's not good, y'all. Because this is really when the crowd starts to realize that Cena's not it. Because, like, we talked before, when Cena came over to Raw, they basically took everything away from him that made his character what it was on SmackDown.
Yep.
And presenting it in front of a somewhat new audience, that's not great. But, like, this storyline becomes about, like, your rapping versus my guitar playing, and, like, Fozzy versus rapping. And, like, but I will always say that the one thing that caused the fans to turn against John Cena is the word...
the cheap sauce promo?
Why too cheap and cheap sauce? Yes. This is the equivalent of Roman Reigns' suffer and succotash. And, like, Diesel had one of these moments, too. It's probably, like, the Christmas one where he was Santa. Like,
yeah.
Vince just has this way of being so lame when
so
he wants...
tone deaf.
He does not get what anyone might find cool. And I don't know who came up with, like, why too cheap and cheap sauce. I did a thorough look on the internet to see if that was, like, a phrase people were using back then.
Oh.
It wasn't.
What could that be? It's not in reference to anything.
No, it's not.
Why is Jericho cheap? What is that? What
does cheap have to do with anything?
No.
It is bad. It's relentlessly, miserably bad. And, like, it's the first time I've ever heard anyone say a catchphrase, look to the crowd for a response, and receive no reaction.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
And they're supposed to be chanting, why too cheap?
And I can't ever remember it being that bad. And I literally, it's from that moment on
At
that
least
the fan...
he didn't do what he would have done when he was still rapping, which would have been to call him Y2 gay.
That's a good point. Because that's all his rapping gimmick was.
Super homophobic, yeah.
That's also not great, but the fans loved it.
That would have gotten over.
Yeah. Thank God, because Y2 Gay would have followed Chris Jericho around for the rest of his career.
Shocked they never went there.
This company sucks. But, like, it's just such a miserable bummer. And you could probably trace the fan base turning against Roman to suffer and succotash. It's just these one moment where, like, the crowd very clearly realizes, oh, you're not cool. We don't like you.
They trade the advantage. The crowd is split. Half is chanting, let's go Cena. The other half is, let's go Jericho. Honestly, it was a great atmosphere. Like, yeah. This felt like a Final Four game where you get dueling chants between the different fan bases.
And I think WWE sees the future in this, where they're like, oh, so even if they're booing him, like, some of the crowd still supports him. Yeah. We can work with this.
Like, you can 100% see the dynamic, that it's the kids chanting for Cena and the grown dudes chanting for Jericho.
Like, they know what they're doing. Yeah. Like, everybody that Cena faces after this is like a Smark favorite. They're not dumb. Like, they're trying to engineer this reaction.
Which... yeah, I don't know. I guess it worked out in the end. But
yeah, it sure did.
I would not have said Kurt Angle should be the next guy we feud him with after this.
No, and that's miserable. Like, it winds up being very bad. And, like, it only gets worse.
Perfect? Hassan.
Yeah, because nobody could cheer
No,
him over
no,
Cena.
absolutely not.
It just wouldn't work.
All-American John Cena against Muhammad Hassan.
Yep, that would have been good.
Cena makes a comeback. He goes to the five knuckle shuffle, but Jericho pops up and gets him in the walls of Jericho. Cena fights the ropes. Jericho comes off the ropes. Cena catches him with the FU and pins him. Good solid match there. The crowd really made it for me.
Yeah, it was good. I've never thought that Cena and Jericho had very good chemistry. This is probably the best match they ever had. They had some real fucking stinkers later on. But like this one's fine.
Hmm. Um, Next up, we've got a no holds barred match for the World Heavyweight Championship as Batista defends against John Bradshaw and Layfield. Back in June, JBL appeared to have been crowned the first SmackDown World Heavyweight Champion when he won a six-pack challenge. Of course, they needed a new champion because John Cena had been drafted to Raw, but right after JBL won the match, Teddy Long announced that there was no need for a new champion because SmackDown has a champion. Batista has been drafted to SmackDown.
And that was a great moment, despite the fact that it wound up being horrible for everyone involved.
Yeah. JBL was instead named the number one contender. They gave him a shot at the title at the Great American Bash, which he won by disqualification when Batista hit him with a chair.
Yep.
Pretty lame finish to a pay-per-view, but they felt like they needed to get another month out of this after they couldn't do Muhammad Hassan. I mean, you look at SmackDown's roster at that point. I mean, Christian might have been the guy.
I guess, but all the steam's already come out of him.
Yeah.
He's certainly not credible. He hasn't won a match in forever.
Yeah, the options are pretty limited when you look at SmackDown at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. So we get Batista versus JBL. No holds barred.
Well, at least no holds are barred. That's compelling.
They fight in the entrance. They fight through the crowd. Batista spears JBL through the barricade. They go into the ring. JBL pulls out a belt, but Batista gets it away from him and whips him with it. JBL hits the clothesline from hell, but Batista kicks out at 2. JBL brings the stairs into the ring. He sets up to powerbomb Batista on the stairs, but Batista backdrops him off, hits a spine buster, a Batista bomb, and then a second Batista bomb on the steps to get the pin.
I mean, as for a match that they really had to put together with like no heat and like nothing going for it, this was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, I'm glad they kept it short. They didn't try. This was less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, you don't want to see a competitive match between these two. You want to see Batista kill him and move on. Also, that Batista bomb on the steps, that never wasn't over for me. That thing looks great.
It's one of those things that, like, I don't think there's a trick there.
Nope, I think you're just taking it on the steps, brother.
Ooh, so we get the video package for the main event, and then it's time for the match we've come to see, the immortal Hulk Hogan versus the showstopper, the main event, the icon, Shawn Michaels.
Now, when you heard that we were going to do this show, you probably thought exactly one thing. Oh, this is the match where Shawn Michaels loses his mind and starts bouncing all over the place.
There's definitely some of that. There was not as much of that as I remembered. Like, in my mind, it doesn't overshadow the match.
Yeah, in my memory, this was like a 5-minute match, and it's all just Shawn Michaels passive-aggressively showing up Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, because I've probably watched this match like twice, but I've watched the clips of Shawn, ridiculously selling to the Benny Hill theme like 10 times at least.
Yes. But like, this is a 21-minute match.
Got to be one of the longer matches of Hogan's career.
Like, it's stunning. Like, there's probably a part of Hogan that said, this will be the last chance I have to have a good match in my career. So let's Because Hulk Hogan, the best you can say for him here is that he tries. He really tries.
He's not doing well physically. Like, he's just
No.
had a surgery, but it's not looking good. Like, I think he goes away to have another surgery after this, and you can see he needs it.
Like, he had one hip replaced already. He gets the other one replaced right after this. It's bad.
Shawn is out first, mostly gets cheered. Hogan is out to a big reaction. A giant American flag comes down behind him as he's making his entrance.
Holy shit, how on the nose is this?
There's a lot of stalling at the beginning. When they lock up, Hogan just kind of throws Michaels off of him, as you would expect. Hogan hits a shoulder block that sends Michaels like all the way to the floor, and he does like a backflip.
God, I love Shawn Michaels so much.
Michaels gets hung up on the top rope, and Hogan kicks him in the gut over and over. And then like Shawn bounces up and straddles the top rope, and Hogan like shakes the rope and bounces him 2 or 3 times.
This is just, if you're going to want to see an old man Hulk Hogan match, this is the kind of good stuff you want him to do.
Hogan throws Michaels out to the floor. He does like a somersault out on the floor. Like, I guess I just said this doesn't overshadow the match. I mean, to me, this doesn't like cross the line where it became. It was funny, but it was reasonable to me.
Like, the Diesel match is the template for what Shawn Michaels has the ability to do, which is make you irrelevant in a match that you get all the offense in. Like, he can bump in such a way that you don't even look at the person doing the move. You're just watching Shawn. And he does that a little bit here, but I feel like he's mostly doing that to try to save the match because he knows that Hulk is so limited. He's got to do extra.
Yeah. They go out to the floor where Michaels runs Hogan into the ring post, which is the turning point in the match as Hogan is busted open pretty badly here. Pretty good blade job from Hogan.
Hogan always could get the juice. Like, yeah. Hogan liked that.
Looked great with his hair.
Because it would just instantly turn all red because it was such a shitty, like, dye job.
Michaels locks him in the sleeper hold. Hogan almost passes out, but he fights out. Michaels gets him with the forearm and he kips up. He goes for the elbow drop, but Hogan moves. Hogan hulks up. He goes for the big boot, but Michaels hits another forearm, and the referee gets bumped. Michaels gets Hogan in the sharpshooter. A second referee runs in, and Hogan manages to make it to the ropes. I believe that was where the crowd started chanting for Brett.
Yes, I believe so.
Michaels gets Hogan with a low blow. Michaels brings a chair into the ring, nails Hogan with a chair shot to the head. He hits the elbow drop. He tunes up the band, drills Hogan with sweet chin music. He makes the cover, but Hogan kicks out at 2. He hulks up, hits 3 punches and a big boot. As Michaels takes the big boot, he falls down, then stands up, runs in a circle, and falls back down.
It is either, depending on how you feel about professional wrestling, the best or worst sell of a move ever made.
I just love, you can see Hogan kind of watching him out of the corner of his eye, and he's just like, what the fuck?
And Hulk Hogan is a politician. So you know he's looking at him like, are you trying to steal this match from me, motherfuckers?
And he did.
And he definitely did, because the only thing you remember at home about this match is this sell of this move.
Hogan drops the leg. Well, first, Hogan poses forever before he drops the leg.
I feel like this is honestly Hulk trying to get the match back.
Yeah.
Because Shawn just laying on the ground for 30 seconds while Hulk
as
poses.
Hogan does the ear cup to every side of the arena.
It's like, okay, motherfucker, you're going to do your thing? Fine, I'm going to do my thing for way longer.
Hogan hits the leg drop, gets the 1, 2, 3. Hogan poses, Michaels gets up, he shoves him, and then Michaels says something like, I needed to know and I found out. He offers Hogan a handshake. Hogan shakes his hand, Michaels leaves, Hogan poses to end the show.
You could argue that this is part of the prolonged Shawn Michaels storyline of, like, as he comes to the end of his career.
Still searching for his legacy.
Yeah, he needs to find out where he stands in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of it, is if he can beat Hulk Hogan, does he solidify himself as the greatest of all time?
Because his legacy is complicated. Because his time as the top guy was a failure. And the hottest part of the business, he doesn't have any hand in. So, like, it probably would have meant a lot both to Shawn Michaels, the character, and to Michael Hickenbottom to beat Hulk Hogan here.
Yeah, he didn't get to do it.
In the end, he's a consummate businessman, and he always was.
Yeah, I mean, what's he going to do, shoot on Hogan?
I mean, that would have been fucking funny. If this turns into a shoot fight between skinny Shawn Michaels and old man Hulk.
Who you got? Hogan traded with Matsuda. He's a badass.
See, I always wish that I could have seen Hulk Hogan shoot fight on somebody, because I feel like he actually had some juice, you know what I mean?
Giant dude. And he was really strong back in his day. And, like, he was trained in that Florida gym where, like, they messed you up before they would smarten you up.
And we all know about Japan Hulk.
Yeah.
Japan Hulk knows holds, brother.
The greatest of all time.
Yep.
The next night on Raw, I swear to God, Shawn Michaels came out and, like, shook an etch-and-sketch to, like, reset himself as a babyface.
Basically.
He's just like, let's just rewind things to a few weeks ago.
When does DX happen? Is that like 08 or 6?
No, that's right. That's the coming WrestleMania, after the next WrestleMania. So that's, 8 months away.
I'm guessing they already know. So it's just like, all right, we need him babyface again. We're doing DX.
Yeah. And that is a wrap for this show. I mean, this is a show that I feel like if you just did, like, the star ratings on each match, maybe it wasn't that great, but I loved watching this show and reliving all this.
This was a great show to watch in context, and this was a show that not only me, I think we were all extremely hyped for coming into it. I can't think of another show that probably has a bigger disparity between how we feel about it now and how we felt about it at the time. Because, like, every match on this show lit Smarks on fire with rage.
Yes.
Like, not only was it like Edge beats Matt and Ray versus Eddie sucked, and, like, a lot of people thought that Eugene was going to come back as, like, Nick Dinsmore, and, like, they're wasting Nick Dinsmore, who's a great worker, and Bob Orton's back, that was fucking stupid, and John Cena sucks, and Batista sucks, and Hulk Hogan sucks. Like, Smarks hated this show.
Those Smart Mark tears just taste like sugar to you.
It really does. I love this show. I loved it from start to finish. It was weird. It was quirky. Like, I think we said at the top of the show, but, like, I can't think of a non-WrestleMania that had, like, every match mean something like this. All of these are, like, 6-month storylines, aside from, like, Batista JBL. They had, like, actual, like, character development.
Even that, intrigue. I mean, just we can see Batista's the incredible shrinking champion.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Like, he's fallen so far from that where he was when he beat Triple H in Vengeance.
Even though this show is really good, and even though this year of TV had been really good, you can already see that there's some problems brewing.
Yeah.
Like, John Cena's not where you want him to be. Batista's the incredible shrinking champion, as you said. Randy's a heel. Those three were supposed to be the future. What's happening?
Yeah.
Edge is coming up, and that's great. But, like, who's the baby faces? If Cena and Batista don't work out, what do you have?
No. And the guys who actually drew this buy rate were Hogan and Michael. I mean, it was really Hogan. Like, Michaels isn't a giant draw on his own. We know that.
Yeah. Michaels could, like, help. Like, he wouldn't hurt a draw, but, like, he wasn't going to be the guy. And, like, this
Hogan isn't going to be around after this.
If you contextualize this as the last good Hulk Hogan match, it's easy to be more fond of it than maybe it even deserves. But I mean, Shawn Michaels did his work to make this the last good Hulk Hogan match.
Yeah. So, next week, going to have something I'm really excited about. We're covering SummerSlam 2010, which is the summer of the Nexus. Huge, how long have we been waiting to do this?
I think when we were originally putting this show together and we realized it was going to be more than just the one-off WrestleMania 9 podcast we did, we put together like a list of like 10 things we really wanted to cover. We did like 8 of them in the first year. And then like one of them was like Great American Bash 04, and you made me wait like 3 years for that. And the other one was the Nexus, and we've literally never had an opportunity to say one fucking word about the Nexus up until now. Despite it being, at the time, one of the most exciting storylines in wrestling history, until it wasn't.
We've talked about the Nexus debut and like how it went wrong and like the whole John Cena being fired and like all that nonsense so many times off the air.
Like, we have endless content. But not just that. This pay-per-view, the one where it's Nexus versus Team WWE, is insane. The team that they choose for WWE, the World Heavyweight title match, everything on this show.
Yeah. We got the Straight Edge Society, which is something else I've been wanting to talk about. We get the whole like Kane, Undertaker, Rey Mysterio saga. God, there's only 6 matches on this show.
That's because the main event gets 40 minutes. I love it.
And what will we do without a Sheamus versus Randy Orton match?
Which I'm pretty sure is on every SummerSlam from like 2008 to like today.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that and more next time on the Lawcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week.